7,000. Ian, to what you were intimating about how you may need a quarterback somewhat close to what Patrick Mahomes can do if you're actually going to go out and beat him on the big stage. And that leads us to the question regarding the Bears and where they stand with the number 1 overall pick. You had the report. We played it yesterday. We even played it today. Just to remind folks, you mentioned that Ryan Poles wants a historical haul if he's going to give up the number 1 overall pick. What does a historical haul constitute, Ian?
It would be the kind of collection of picks that would mean you absolutely cannot turn it down. It would be so many picks and with so much value that you have no choice but to say, I'm giving up this franchise quarterback and I'm okay with it. Like, we talked about not having a Patrick Mahomes. The comp for Caleb Williams is Mahomes. Now, Mahomes wasn't a number 1 pick, but if we would do that draft all over again, obviously he would be. Like, if you get one of those guys, you do whatever you can to get it, and you do whatever you can to keep him, right? Like, Justin Fields is awesome. And I think one thing you're hearing a lot from Bears now, on the record, off the record, is praise of Justin Fields. He deserves it. He has been excellent, right? Like, his improvement as a leader, I think he's pretty rock starish as a leader. Players love him. There's everything to like about Justin Fields. He is going to be a very good starter in the NFL. I am confident of that. That's sort of not what the conversation is, because I think if the Bears had to go into this next year with Justin Fields as their starting quarterback, they're absolutely fine. They're good. It's just, you have the opportunity to pick number 1. It's rare. And either you pick your franchise quarterback and are set up for the next 15 years, or you make someone else give you so ungodly much that you're set up no matter what happens. And, it's incredible where Ryan Poles and the Bears are right now. It is, unprecedented, basically. They have the opportunity to make sure that they are never in this situation again.
Do you have a team in mind, Ian, or a couple of teams that may be most likely to entertain the thought of giving up a historic haul?
I mean, a lot of teams. You have, the Commanders, who are at 2. Mike Day with Cliff Kingsbury. And, Adam Peters was a big part of the Trey Lance trade in San Francisco. Would they come up for the top pick? Sure they would. Would the Giants were they at 6, right? The Giants, would the Raiders. I'm sure there are a lot of teams that would. But really the question for the Bears is, if you're going to do it, if you're going to give up number 1, like last year, I think it was pretty clear they were not head over heels in love with Bryce Young, and the draft pick compensation was so much they had to take it. That was an incredible trade. Incredible. Whatever happened to Bryce Young, that was incredible. I think this year, if you have, and I know, many teams in the NFL believe Caleb Williams is like special. Mm-hmm. If you have the opportunity for that, again, it has to be something where you have zero doubt that you are getting so ungodly much that it is okay giving up a franchise quarterback.
Ian Rapoport joining us here on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline. So if it's going to take a historic haul, maybe some teams won't have the appetite for that. What teams could be potential landing spots for Justin Fields if that's the route that Ryan Poles chooses to go? We've talked a lot about the Steelers as a possibility. Falcons. Sure. Are the Vegas Raiders still in play now that Luke Getsy's the offensive coordinator there? Any other teams you could see Justin Fields being an option for?
First two you mentioned, I would say, are definitely options. There's a lot of, we'll see when they do it. The timing's going to be interesting because, everyone thinks the Bucs are going to re-sign Baker Mayfield. Okay? Probably. What if they don't? There's a spot right there. What if the Vikings say, Kirk Cousins, you know what? It's too much. Now, I don't know if the Bears and Vikings would trade, but there's certainly been plenty of interdivisional trades. The Vikings have done a bunch of them. So, that would be a lot, but maybe that's the way they decide to go. There's a bunch of teams that have quarterbacks that like to re-sign, and if they don't, or maybe they say, you know what, Fields is better. Like I'm not comparing Justin Fields to Tom Brady, so please, but when everyone thought the Bucs were going to re-sign Jameis Winston, it was obvious they offered him a contract, and then it became clear that they could get Tom Brady, and you know what, we're just going to go with that guy. And maybe that's the case. Maybe someone says, you know what, we can get Justin Fields. We're just not going to re-sign our guy. We're going to go get that guy. So I think it's going to be a really good market. I think the Bears could get a premium pick, second rounder, probably at least, maybe more. Again, they're in a really good situation of just getting so many picks almost no matter what they do.
Ian, do you believe that this is something that if, in fact, they do pivot and go in that direction and move on from Justin, that trade, they would want to do it sooner rather than later, just to make sure, as you're talking, that some of the quarterback seats aren't already taken up?
Yeah, if they could get the right price, you'd sort of like to do it. I mean, it doesn't. I think for the Bears, because of where they pick in the draft, it doesn't really matter when they do it.
Right.
It really just matters if you set a value and you get what you want. Like if you're, like, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think it's going to be a situation where the Bears get to April 1st and go, oh man, we just can't get rid of Fields. Like they will be able to trade him no matter what, and someone is going to be willing to pay. It's just a matter of maximizing that price, which is, very challenging. But if you have, probably the best free agent / trade lottery ticket, just given age, athleticism, improving, then it almost doesn't matter when you do it.
Ian Rapoport joining us here on Waddle and Silvy, Miller in for Silvy today. Ian, we've talked a lot about a second-round plus being the potential compensation that the Bears would need to move off of or to trade away Fields. There's also been the idea that he could garner a first-round pick. I'm curious if you think a conditional first-round pick, similar to the way the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers last year, even though they only had to give up a second-round pick to the Packers because he didn't meet the number of the percentage of snaps. Is that a possibility for Ryan Poles where he would maybe get a first-round pick, but it would be a year later, do you think?
Possible, yeah. I mean, well, if you're talking, let's say the options are a second-round pick now or a first-round pick a year later, value-wise, that's basically the same.
Yeah.
That's just which would you prefer. And maybe he says, you know what, I just like to spread this out a little bit and get a 1 next year instead of a 2 this year. That's the same value. To me, it doesn't matter. The way you get a 1 is if 2 teams want him. And the way you get a 1 is if you have a bidding war. And if 2 teams say, this is the only chance I have at quarterback, then maybe he could get a 1. Now, I think that probably happens less than most people think. It's like in free agency, if you have a really, really, really coveted free agent, I mean like top-of-the-market free agent who everybody wants, then you have 3 teams. Most people have 2 maybe. The reality is a lot of free agents just have 1. One person is willing to pay the price, and then you do the best deal you can. That's what it's like in trades too. Like if the Bears have 2, they're golden.
Yeah.
That's otherwise they say this is our price for whoever wants it, and if you don't meet it, then we'll just keep them until.
But you're confident now that the consensus around the NFL, and again, a lot can change, and interviews have to happen and everything else, but the majority of the National Football League personnel people are pretty sold on Caleb Williams being a difference-making quarterback in the league.
Oh yeah. Yep. Now there's other things you got to get comfortable with.
Sure.
All the rumors about him not wanting to go to Chicago, and I know his dad is very outspoken. There's definitely some things, talent-wise, everybody believes he's special.
And you believe that I'm sure you left Vegas already, but if you were to go back and place a bet that the Bears will stick with number 1 overall, and ultimately when this draft comes and goes, they will select Caleb Williams if you had to make a play.
I will not be making a bet because that is against the rules of my company.
Okay.
Same reason I did not gamble 1 bit in Vegas. However, I would say most likely now, I would say they probably make the pick.
Okay.
And it's probably Caleb Williams. Now, again, if it's if the Commanders offer them, swap picks and 2 1s to move 1 spot, I don't know. That's just the problem. It's I can come up with all the different value and say, well, 2 to 1, that's not that far, but that's not actually the question. We're talking picks. The question is really, what would it take for you to give up on Caleb Williams? I know you're going to be okay with that. And even from 2 to 1, it might be more than that. To answer your question, my guess right now is they stick with 1 and make the pick.
Interesting.
Ian Rapoport joining us here for another moment here on ESPN 1000. Ian, free agency for the Kansas City Chiefs. They've got a couple of big guys in Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, who both are going to be available, or at least They have the potential franchise tag, obviously, could be used on Snead. Chris Jones, what do you think ultimately it's going to look like? Does he end up back in Kansas City, or will he be someone that Ryan Poles and the Bears could potentially pursue in free agency?
Yeah, Snead is a franchise tag candidate. Usually keep very good players, homegrown players. So I think that makes sense there. Chris Jones is difficult because you can't tag him. I mean, you can, but you're not going to tag him at that absurd, be like
32 or something, yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to tag him. I don't know what his future holds. He is an excellent player. He probably had, held out, showed up maybe, and people are like, oh, what kind of shape he's in. And he actually was better this year than he was previous years. I mean, just a great player. Somebody could definitely make a run at him. Poles would make sense. And I think, the really good teams build from offensive line and defensive lines. If you look at where Ryan Poles has allocated resources, that's where, right?
Yep.
Makes sense. I mean, first-round tackle, you trade for Montez Sweat. It was, a lot of people laughed about that trade. I remember I got made fun of for talking about how smart it was. Looks pretty smart now, especially when you consider they probably get that 2 back if they trade Justin Fields anyway. But, yeah, I would say, Bears still have some money. They still are probably not going to have a quarterback they're going to have to pay. I would think that'd be a potential landing spot, sure.
Interesting times here in Chicago for sure.
Good stuff, Ian. We
Pretty
appreciate the insight, my man. And thanks for hopping on and joining us today.
Thanks, Ian.
Absolutely. Good talking to you guys. Take care.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube, and make sure to download the ESPN Chicago app